for a war. It was indeed a provocation. It was. You might have mentioned that the Ukrainian ambassador spoke very moderately on that issue. President Zelensky is calling to stop panicking on that thing. Other the Ukrainian officials are saying that they don't see imminent threat which is coming from Russia. I don't know why U.S. is escalating tensions and at the same time accusing Russia of escalating tensions. We never said anything on that. All is that this all is linked to the presence of Russian troops at the Russian-Ukrainian border. That is not true. Russian troops are not at the Russian-Ukrainian border. They are where they normally stay. Whether they more than normal or less than normal, or as they are there all the time, I have no idea. I don't know where these figures came from. 100,000, 120,000. Ukrainians are saying 136,000. We never announced how many troops are there, and I don't know who was counting them. So, I mean, somebody was saying Operation False Flag, but I think that they chose the wrong address. And you rightly said that they build up Ukraine massively with armaments, which also not only looks provocative but dangerous as well. They were saying about evacuating their personnel, which is also provocative, in fact. And again, even President Zelensky was saying that it was unnecessary, and that was a thing that only raises tensions.
Okay, let's take a couple of questions from the chat. Ali Barada, please.
Thank you, Ambassador, for doing this. And I have just a quick follow-up. You say the number. You just said the number 100,000 or whatsoever is in the US, or you don't know where they get it from. Can you tell us what is the number of Russian troops on the border? And my other question, or my real question is, while you have a lot of differences between Russia and the US and the West on Ukraine, it seems that there are some agreement on how to deal with the issue of Iran nuclear agreement, on the step-by-step approach by Mr. Pedersen in Syria. Can you shed some lights on the agreements on those issues beside that number issue? Thank you so much for that.
Which agreements?
Well, it seems that you are working together on the mutual compliance by the US and Iran regarding the JCPOA. And Mr. Pedersen mentioned that Russia and the US have some kind of an agreement to the step-by-step approach regarding how to solve the crisis in Syria.
We would like to have cooperation with the US on a much wider range of things. But it was not our choice to narrow this cooperation to only those areas where we either have a joint interest or US has an interest of its own. After the summit of President Biden with President Putin in Geneva, there was an agreement to try to resolve those areas that became practically non-existent in our cooperation. And we resumed dialogue on strategic stability, which moves meaningfully in the sense that there is a practical conversation between people who understand the issues that they are discussing. We started dialogue on cybersecurity, which was, as you know, a tug of war between US and Russia for a long time. But we ourselves, even during Trump administration, we were proposing to start that dialogue, to lay facts on the table, and to try to solve our differences and to understand each other. This dialogue started under current administration. It also develops, and that's a good thing. There are results that have been already achieved in that area. We also have concerns on cybersecurity and threats coming from other countries, including US, by the way, and that was openly said when that issue was discussed. So we have dialogue on that issue. We have other dialogues, like Iran, you said. We are both interested in returning to JCPOA and to full implementation of obligations that members of the JCPOA undertook upon themselves. As far as again, today it's not our piece of cake, but as far as I know, negotiations in Vienna are moving, and we can with certain caution expect that the agreement will be reached. We had and continue to have a dialogue on Afghanistan. You know that we have the extended troika, which consists of Russia, US, China, and Pakistan, which is a very important instrument in dealing with issues relating to Afghanistan. Ukraine. I mean, we could have a separate press conference on Ukraine because it's a vast topic. Why we cannot agree on Ukraine? Because Ukraine became a geopolitical card, in fact, in our relations both with the US and some Western countries. And perhaps US is not. We have a feeling that US is not interested in resolving that crisis, because, as you mentioned yesterday when I spoke in the Council, when Linda Thomas Greenfield was delivering her statement, she was not only talking about the current crisis between Russia and Ukraine, which is in fact non-existent. Besides all the problems that we experience, but I mean the crisis in what she tried to present. But she didn't mention a single word about Minsk agreement, a single word in her statement, which is telling, in fact. If you want to resolve the crisis in Ukraine, you have to genuinely engage in encouraging and even making Ukraine to implement agreements that they have signed by. So that's a vast topic. Ukraine, unfortunately, became an issue that overshadowed everything else that is between us. And you know that US is perhaps more Catholic on it than Ukrainians themselves, than the Pope. I paraphrase, of course. How many troops are on the border, or not on the border, but where they are stationed now? I have no idea. I don't know where this figure came from, which I cited, but it is not my citation. Nobody knows how many troops, but we are presented with these figures as a fait accompli. We know exactly how many American troops are outside US. That's around 175,000. Besides the bases, besides nuclear weapons, besides other NATO countries which are near Russian borders, which is a concern to us as well. So that is how it is.
Ambassador, are you going to ask your defense ministry how many troops are on the border? Are you planning to ask your defense ministry how many?
I'm not planning to ask my defense ministry. Let my defense ministry speaks for itself.
So you don't want to know how many troops?
Ask my defense ministry, Michelle, if you want yourself, but I don't know why I should be asking my defense ministry. They have their own spokesperson, press secretaries, etc., and they can answer that question if somebody asks them.
Okay, we take one more from the chat, and then we're back to the room. Iftikhar, please.
Thank you. This is Iftikhar Ali from Associated Press of Pakistan. A question other than Ukraine. Mr. Ambassador, despite calls by many countries, including Russia, there has been no progress on unfreezing the Afghan assets to enable the authorities in Kabul to deal with the economic crisis, which is deepening to a dangerous level. As a president of the Security Council, any thoughts on this?
Frankly, I didn't hear most of the question. You're talking about Afghanistan. What?
Afghanistan, sir.
Afghan assets.
Unfree-
Afghan assets.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, that's a relevant question, of course, and we've been advocating returning Afghan assets to Afghanistan because this humanitarian assistance that goes to the country will not solve the problem and will not save Afghani people. Winter is approaching, situation is dire. There are issues with the Afghan assets, as you know. They are blocked by the decisions by U.S. courts, and our U.S. colleagues are saying that they simply legally cannot withdraw those assets and transfer them to Afghanistan. But of course, whatever the answer and whatever courts decided, that doesn't solve the puzzle, and that doesn't help Afghanistan. It's our common priority to maintain stability in Afghanistan. We are urging Taliban to implement what they said in the beginning. We want an inclusive ethno-confessional government. We want stability in the country. We want fight with terrorism. We want fighting drug trafficking. Of course, we all want maintaining and observing human rights in Afghanistan, including for women and girls. We hope that resolution 2615 of the Security Council that was adopted in December last year would permit not only to the UN but to the countries that are willing to assist Afghanistan to build up their humanitarian assistance so that Afghanistan can at least survive the winter. But the issue of unfreezing the Afghanistan assets is a very acute one. I fully agree with you.
Okay, back to the room. Next, Ibtisam.
Hi, my name is Ibtisam Azim from Al Arabi Al Jadid newspaper. I have first follow-up on Ukraine. You cited the...
Perhaps not enough of Ukraine?
I know,
what do you think?
I know. Just a quick follow-up. You cited the Ukrainian president and the ambassador, but as a matter of fact, the Ukrainian ambassador yesterday in the Security Council, but also after, during the stakeout he held, said that his country support holding the Security Council meeting and calling for it by the US. So your comment quickly on that. And my question is actually on Libya and the fact that the Security Council had 3 times within 5 months rollover. What's standing? Could you shed more light, tell us more about your country's position? And did you get any suggestions from the SG about somebody after the resignation of Mr. Kubish? Thank you.
Of course, the Ukrainian ambassador supported the meeting that US called because it fully reflects the narrative that they themselves, Ukrainians, Ukrainian authorities are maintaining on that issue. No surprises here. I hope he will also support our meeting on the 17th of December on the implementation, February, sorry, on the implementation of Minsk agreements. Of course, I'm sure that he would like to come and make a statement, and he would be most welcome to do that. On Libya, indeed, on yesterday, in fact, we adopted a resolution to extend the mandate of UNSMIL for 3 months. The reason for us is very simple. We would like to the Secretary General, and there is a provision in that resolution which refers back to the previous resolution, that the Secretary General should appoint the new SRSG on Libya without delay. And that is the time frame is more or less the end of April, when the contract of Stephanie Williams expires. By that time, we expect that we have the name which will have been agreed by the Security Council, and we will have the new SRSG starting May. Which will be good. They will have the full-fledged mission. It will be based in Tripoli. It will engage in further political process, in forthcoming elections, which are also have to happen without delay. But that is not for the SRSG to decide. That is for the Libyans to decide. His or her job would be to make them agree on the dates and on the format. We believe that this election should be inclusive. Everybody should be given an opportunity to participate. And then we hope that the political process and the settlement will move forward.
Okay, I think we should be taking the last couple of questions, right? Yes, sir, please. Yes.
Hi. Wow. This is Deji from China Central Television. I just had a broad question because yesterday during your remarks you mentioned about megaphone diplomacy. It seems like it's not only about Ukraine, this issue. There are many issues like Syria. Everybody's talking about different sides and installment. What do you really think of the megaphone diplomacy? And as the president this year of the Security Council, what would you do to really deal with issues rather than use megaphones? Thank you.
Yes, yesterday was a perfect example of this so-called megaphone diplomacy that was not about resolving the issue, but to attract attention and to present a version which has nothing to do with reality, but that was also an issue of domestic politics, as you understand, because that was prepared long time before the meeting started. We protested and took it for the procedural voting, not because we were afraid to discuss the issue, but because we thought that it was not about the real issues, but the issues that were fake and that were invented. On the megaphone diplomacy, if I hear something megaphone during my presence, I will not be able to stop it, to stop the speaker who would use a megaphone diplomacy. I hope that we would be able to avoid it in February and later on. We've been saying many times that Security Council members of the Security Council should avoid, naming and shaming. That we should be more engaged in pragmatic things and pragmatic solutions. And in fact, I was saying that many times over the years, that Security Council reaches agreements on most of the issues it discusses. But you are asking only about the issues which are a tug of war or which are on the radar, etc. I understand you are media, you are interested in hot facts, etc. But Security Council operates. But sometimes what it makes and what it does is left behind the scenes and is not very much on the front pages.
Okay, let's have Betul and then the final one from Edith. Okay.
Thank you, Ambassador. Here, Betül, Turkish News Agency, Anadolu. 2 questions. A quick follow-up on Ukraine. The US and the EU are also talking about sanctions if they're in case of an Russian aggression on Ukraine. If there were any sanctions, how would Russia respond? And my second question will be on Syria. Do you expect the Syrian Constitutional Committee to meet in Geneva this month? Thanks.
On sanctions, we've been sanctioned so many times that we lost count. Point 1. Point 2, they threaten us with so-called, who do they call them, horrific or health sanctions? I forgot. And the most ironic thing about it is that they now are talking about sanctions before anything happens. Preventive sanctions. So, you saw yesterday. I saw Senator Menendez discussing it somewhere in the Senate that Russia should be punished because it has bad intentions. Whatever happens, whether it happens, whether it doesn't happen, it should not happen. In fact, Ukrainians are, of course, I saw some statements of their officials are very much welcoming that. You know, the funny thing is, as we've been saying a long time, including Minister Lavrov, that was the time of Poroshenko still, but the situation didn't change. The paradox is that Ukraine is not implementing Minsk agreements, but Russia is being punished for it. We've been with this for a long time already. We learned to live with that. You know, will not harm Russia only if that is implemented. I hope that they will have enough reason not to go forward with it. But that will backfire, of course, and of course we will respond. How we will respond, I will not betray at the moment. On the Constitutional Committee, we will hear from Geir Peterson on 25th of January. When the meeting is being planned, I don't think this month it will happen. Sorry, this month I was thinking January. He will inform us how the preparation for the next round of the Constitutional Committee is going.
Okay, Edith.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. 2 quick follow-ups and then a question. First, you said that the ministries are preparing a response to the U.S. letter. How soon will that be expected? And in your 2 signature events, are you expecting any outcome documents? And my question is about Myanmar. Today is the 1st anniversary of the Myanmar coup. There have been several UN officials who've lamented that the UN Security Council has taken no action to address this. As I'm sure you've read, there were protests and strikes today, and some officials have said that the conflict is quickly sliding into civil war. I wonder if you could address Russia's view on that issue.
I do not. Maybe first 2 questions. Quick responses. Yes, the response to the U.S. response has not been yet finalized. Press Secretary of the President, as well as Minister Lavrov, who today had a telephone conversation with Secretary of State, said that it is in the pipeline. It will come, of course. Of course, it will come. Signature events, no outcome. On Myanmar, I cannot tell you whether it's sliding down to a civil war or not. Of course, we are all looking to resolving that thing peacefully, but that's only the Myanmar people can do as anywhere else. We count on the diplomatic efforts which the current ASEAN chair is doing. You know that we have a new special envoy of the Secretary General who started to engage on Myanmar. And I don't know whether I would betray a secret to you or not, but Security Council is working on a product on Myanmar as we speak. Look, I will tell you one thing, and it will become another, and I don't want to be a liar.
Starting on a resolution and going backwards?
Sorry?
Starting on a resolution?
Look, let's wait. Don't rush things.
Thank you.
Wait now. Ну, наверное, нечестно. Полная, да.
Так, вопрос про Минские соглашения все-таки спрошу. Скажите, пожалуйста, вот всем уже очевидно, и в ООН много раз говорили, что Минские соглашения – это единственный дипломатический способ решения конфликта в Донбассе. Украинские высокопоставленные официальные лица уже в открытую говорят, что Украина не будет их соблюдать. В то же время западные страны накачивают Украину оружием. В этом контексте что собираетесь обсуждать 17 февраля? И понятно, что мегафонная дипломатия не наш метод, но какой смысл вот в прежнем формате все это продолжать, если мы уже все привыкли, что Минские соглашения – это то, что не выполняется? Спасибо.
Мне по-русски, наверное, отвечать, Георгий, да? Sorry, that was about the Minsk agreements. I will answer in Russian with your permission. Although I already cited the Ukrainian Secretary of the National Security Council. Во-первых, 7-я годовщина. Мы каждый год эту тему в Совете Безопасности поднимаем, чтобы привлечь внимание не только Совета Безопасности, но и мирового сообщества к тому, что Украина давно, последовательно сначала саботировала Минские соглашения, а сейчас просто прямым текстом отказывается от них. То есть, я, как и сказал, мы будем обсуждать не выполнение Минских соглашений, а невыполнение Минских соглашений. Мы неоднократно, как вы помните, причем Россию, как вы знаете, так сказать, пытаются выставить стороной Минских соглашений и постоянно требуют от нее выполнить Минские соглашения. Сколько раз мы не говорили и не просили наших коллег прочитать сами Минские соглашения и пакет мер в приложении к ним, где нет ни одного слова России. Все обязательства, которые там изложены, они касаются Киева и Донбасса. Никто ничего не хочет слушать. Но повторение мать учения, я думаю, что надо вновь привлечь внимание к этому вопросу и вновь попытаться побудить наших партнеров, побудить их киевских подопечных вернуться к этому, потому что без этого другого пути решения конфликта нет. Это понятно совершенно. Потому что чем больше проходит времени, тем больше, к сожалению, Донбасс отдаляется от Киева.
Здесь говорили в том числе, что вы говорили здесь сами тоже, что Украина, по сути, следует в формате внешней политики США, и, может быть, не с украинцами нужно уже говорить про Минские соглашения, а с теми, кто действительно что-то решает.
Вот мы говорим и побуждаем, так сказать, наших американских коллег повлиять на своих украинских, скажу мягко, подопечных. Но понимание американской стороной Минских соглашений и ситуации вокруг Украины, оно, наверное, еще, к сожалению, меньше и более искаженное, чем понимание наших коллег по нормандскому формату. Я думаю, perhaps that's enough. What do you think? Thank you very much, my dear friends.
Thank you very much.
I'll be seeing you often during this month. I'll have no other choice. Fortunately, I have no other choice. I will have to attend to you very often.
There's an active shooter. Currently, right now, not that far from me. This is breaking right now. Bridgewater College. There's an active shooter. Bridgewater College has tweeted out reports of an active shooter on campus, shelter in place. These are early reports. Intel Point Alert is actually tweeting it out now. Bridgewater College is about a half an hour south of where I am now. I would try to go there, except I can't because my son is with me. Trying to see. Situation is ongoing. We're communicating with authorities. We'll update. Text your loved ones to know you're okay. That was 17 minutes ago. No, well, that last tweet I just read was very just a few seconds ago. 1:58. State police are on the scene as of 30 minutes ago. I'm trying to see. That's according to their. It's Bridgewater, Virginia. Private liberal arts college in Virginia. Large police presence currently. 17 minutes ago. Boo, boo, boo. I'm trying to see what else. Trying to see if Daily News Record is on scene there. Unfortunately, right now I can't share because I'm working from home, so I can't share the videos. They're also really small on the laptop. So it doesn't look like an active scene. As of 10 minutes ago, there was a video posted online showing not a lot of police, but Commonwealth Attorney Marcia Garst and Rockingham Fire and Rescue Chief Halloway are on the scene. Rockingham County Sheriff as well, Brian Hutchinson, is on the scene. It doesn't look like it's active right now. So even though it still says it's active, someone else, I must have passed at least 20 police vehicles on my way in. Active shooter reported at Bridgewater College. So that's an update. 6 minutes ago. See, I don't know if that's true. Yeah, according to the video, it looks like it doesn't look. The video that I saw real briefly, it doesn't look like it's an active scenario, but everyone is writing about this. Victims reported, according to social media posts. I did see something about it, potentially a campus officer. Ooh, that wasn't good. I stepped on something and sparks. Shelter in place is still in place. Bear with me 1 second. Yeah, so we're trying to find out what is going on down there. According to local news affiliate here, and again, this is not far. This is Harrisonburg, which is probably 30 minutes from me. Bridgewater College of Virginia is reporting an active shooter on campus. The shelter in place has been issued for the campus. The school made the announcement at 1:24 on Twitter. At 1:25, the school posted a note saying this is not a test. More information to follow. The reporting is Bridgewater College is a private liberal arts college in Bridgewater, Virginia. Damn, dude. Even if my kid wasn't here, I still wouldn't be able to go because I got to pick the other one up at 3 o'clock. But there's no incident or there's no updates. April, if you find out there's going to be a press conference, let me know. Shit, I don't even know if that camera's charged. Because if there is, I could go down if there's going to be a press conference tonight, depending on the time. Right now, sorry, I'm just looking to see if there's anything else. April, if you're watching, you should probably just write this up too. I'm trying to see. There's one person that wrote something. It's unverified though. Yeah, there's nothing. Just a lot of the same tweets that I've already been reading. I'll keep that updated. We also have 2 press conferences that are scheduled to start soon. We have the State Department press briefing, which was scheduled to start at 2 o'clock. We also have Jen Psaki's press conference, which was scheduled also to start at 2 o'clock. It's now 2:08. Minnesota has an active school shooter right now, someone else said. What's the school name there? There's very little. Sorry, I know this isn't great television because you guys can't see what I'm looking at. Anyway, I'm going to throw up this State Department press briefing and we will put that up until they should be live here in a few minutes. And then if that doesn't come live before Jen Psaki's, I'll switch to hers. But those are the 2. Look at that timing. As soon as I switch, their camera turns on. All right, here's the press briefing. State Department.
One item at the top, and then look forward to taking your questions. Yesterday, on the occasion of His Highness the Emir of Qatar, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani's visit to Washington, D.C., President Biden announced that he intends to designate Qatar as a major non-NATO ally. The president's decision is a symbol of the strong relationship and strategic partnership between our 2 countries. Qatar served as the first and primary transit destination for over 60,000 evacuees from Afghanistan, including U.S. citizens, lawful permanent residents, special immigrant visa applicants, and our Afghan partners last August, and it continues to act as our protecting power in Afghanistan. Qatar stands with us as a member of the de-ISIS coalition. It's a member of the Riyadh-based Terrorist Financing Targeting Center, and has actively participated in 5 rounds of multilateral sanctions designations against major U.S. and UN-designated terrorist organizations. Yesterday's signing of more than $20 billion deal between Boeing and Qatar Airways Group, which will support tens of thousands of U.S. manufacturing jobs, also highlights the strong economic and commercial partnership Qatar and the United States share. As we celebrate the 50th anniversary of U.S.-Qatar diplomatic relations this year, we look forward to building on our strong foundation with an eye to the next 50 years of partnership between the United States and Qatar. With that, happy to take your questions on this or anything else.
I think it won't surprise you that I would like to move to Ukraine.
Okay.
Although if someone does have a question about Qatar and major non-NATO allies status, I'm happy to defer. But if not, Ukraine. So recognizing that a lot has been said today about Ukraine by President Putin, by Foreign Minister Lavrov, by Secretary Blinken on Twitter, by senior U.S. officials, is there anything new that you can report to us in terms of the diplomacy and what that will look like going forward? You will have seen that Putin said that he was open to continued talks, but there doesn't seem to be any kind of, at least not yet, there doesn't seem to be any kind of definite timetable for that.
So Matt, as you know, we issued a written readout of the Secretary's call with Foreign Minister Lavrov earlier today. I won't go through that as everyone has it now, but I'll make a couple other broad points. The Secretary made clear to Foreign Minister Lavrov, as he has before, that we are prepared to engage in serious diplomacy with the Russian Federation on a reciprocal basis. He also made clear that the non-paper we sent over, our response to the so-called treaties that the Russian Federation published the other week, contain a wide range of serious substantive proposals. And we believe, when you think about the Venn diagram between our security concerns, the collective security concerns of the United States and the transatlantic community, and then the stated security concerns of the Russian Federation, we believe that there is an intersection there where we can address those mutual concerns on a reciprocal basis. Those, of course, include our concerns, the concerns of our allies and partners, but also the stated security concerns of the Russians. Now, that will require intensive, substantive, serious, sustained diplomacy if we are to get there. We are prepared for that. The Secretary also made the point that this diplomacy, if it is to bear fruit, will need to take place in a context of de-escalation. That is something, of course, that we have yet to see. We heard from Foreign Minister Lavrov this morning, and I will primarily leave it to the Russians to characterize their response, but that we heard again that they are working on a formal response to the U.S. non-paper that was sent over the other day. That draft will go to President Putin, as we have known and expected all along. And when President Putin has a chance to review it and approve it, it will be coming to the United States. We understand that once that takes place, the Russians, too, are willing to engage in continued dialogue. As to what form, as to the timing, that will depend on the receipt of the Russian response to our response.
So you keep talking about this Venn diagram with the overlapping areas, but the thing is that President Putin said today that you guys have ignored their main requests, and that's not exactly true. You guys haven't ignored them. You've just flat out rejected them and told them that they're non-starters and you're not going to. So you're well aware of what they are, and you're not ignoring them. You're just saying, no, we're not going to go there. So I'm just wondering if, given that, if you think that there is still an opportunity to resolve this without getting into what the Russians' main concerns are.
We heard from President Putin a variety of things. I will leave it to the criminologists out there, budding, professional, amateur, otherwise, to read the tea leaves and try to interpret the significance of those remarks. For our part, we don't necessarily need to do that because we know that a formal response from the Russian Federation is forthcoming. We heard that again today from Foreign Minister Lavrov. So we have been clear and consistent since we started this process that there are areas where we believe there is maneuverability, that there is room to engage in substantive discussions together with our allies and partners with the Russian Federation on areas where, frankly, we have security concerns. The Russians will put their concerns on the table. And again, in full coordination with our allies and partners, we'll see if there is room to address those concerns. We believe there is. Now, to your question, the response that we provided to the Russian Federation the other day, it did address the points that have been raised by the Russian Federation. That doesn't necessarily mean that the Russians will agree with the way in which they were addressed. And I think, as you've heard us say all along, it will not come as a surprise to you that there are some areas where we think diplomacy can lead to progress, can redound positively on the security interests of the United States, of the transatlantic community, but also potentially Russia, while other areas are non-starters. And those areas that we've said all along are non-starters. The idea that a country, any other country, can impinge on the security arrangements, the alliances, the partnerships of another country, the inviolability of international borders, sovereignty, territorial integrity. You're right that there is no trade space, none, when it comes to those issues. That should not, and I assume did not, come as a surprise to the Russian Federation or to anyone else as we described what was in our response, because we've been crystal clear about that. Francesca.
How do you envision this intensive, substantive, sustained, serious diplomacy we're talking about? Is this going into rounds of negotiations in Geneva over 1-2 years with Russia? Is that what you're envisioning?
I don't think that time frame is what any of us have in mind as an initial matter, at least. What I can say is that for the past several weeks, we have been, together with our allies and partners, engaged in diplomacy with the Russian Federation in a variety of venues and fora. We have done this bilaterally through the Strategic Stability Dialogue that Deputy Secretary Sherman engaged in with her Russian counterpart, Mr. Ryabkov, in Geneva the other week. We have done this in the context of the NATO-Russia Council, together with our NATO allies. We've done this in the context of the OSCE, with all of the participating member states of the OSCE, of course, of which Russia is a member. And Secretary Blinken had an opportunity, again bilaterally, but outside the formal SSD context, the context of the Strategic Stability Dialogue, to engage with Foreign Minister Lavrov in Geneva the other week. So we are prepared to continue through all of those venues, through all of those fora. What matters most to us is that our diplomacy, our collective engagement with the Russian Federation continues to be conducted in full consultation and coordination with our partners and allies. Oftentimes that will take place, we expect, with our allies and partners sitting next to us at the table, as would happen at the NATO-Russia Council, at the OSCE. If it were to involve another bilateral engagement, which we are open to, we would continue to do that in full consultation and coordination with our allies and partners. Nothing about without. That is not a mantra that we are ever going to abandon or discount in any way. And I think you actually saw that today after Secretary Blinken had an opportunity to speak with Foreign Minister Lavrov. He then immediately picked up the phone and spoke with NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg, OSCE Chairman in Office Zbigniew Rau, EU High Representative Josep Borrell. The Secretary thought it was important to engage them immediately on his discussion with Foreign Minister Lavrov. They had an opportunity to discuss that engagement. They also had an opportunity to discuss our approach to the Russian Federation going forward, both in terms of diplomacy and dialogue, which remains our preferred course, but the alternative course that we are continuing to pursue, the course of defense and deterrence.
Are you in any way more confident today after hearing from Foreign Minister Lavrov, after hearing President Putin at his press conference, that an aggression against Ukraine can be avoided by diplomacy?
I'd make a couple points. One, this is not about optimism. This is not about pessimism. This is about a clear-eyed approach to what to us and what to our allies and partners is a clear threat to international peace and security. So these emotions, these orientations, one way or another, to us, it is about the stakes of this, and the stakes for us are very clear. Number two, again, we are just not going to be in the business of parsing, certainly not publicly, statements we hear from senior Russian officials, because we understand again today that we'll be in receipt of a formal response that has been approved by President Putin that presumably will detail precisely and in specific language where the Russian Federation stands. Andrea.
Thank you, Ned. Is there, speaking of time frames, is there a time frame beyond which, if you don't see any signs of de-escalation, there could be a number of steps? There's pressure from the Senate, in fact, for sanctions before any kind of kinetic action. Could the U.S., is there some limit to how long you can have 130,000 plus troops and other military equipment, missiles in Belarus? And if I may just say something also on a point of personal privilege. I don't know what else has been said in this room, but I just want to say that a remark on the passing of a real pioneer, one of your predecessors, Phyllis Oakley, who was just such an inspiration to women in this building and to the reporters who cover this building, because of the written and, most importantly, the unwritten rules of gender discrimination in the Foreign Service. And she really persevered and broke through. So she was a great standard bearer. Among other titles, she was an Assistant Secretary of State. She was also a Deputy Spokesperson and spent some time speaking to your predecessors as well. So she is someone who has really left her mark on this institution. You saw that the department issued condolences to her family, and to her loved ones, and noted the legacy she leaves behind, a legacy that was integral to doing what was long overdue, ensuring that women were fully engaged, able to be fully engaged in this work, and that married women had the same rights as their male counterparts. So we do know her passing, and appreciate you raising that. In terms of the time frame, our goal here is to forestall, is to prevent, is to deter a further Russian invasion of Ukraine. So only the Russian Federation can determine how long this goes on for. We are ready either way. We are ready if the Russians are willing to continue down the path of diplomacy and dialogue in good faith. Again, knowing that this is a process that, if it is to be effective, has to take place in the context of de-escalation. We are equally ready, however, if the Russians determine that they are set on the path of further and renewed aggression. This is a path that we've been walking simultaneously as we have an outstretched hand for diplomacy and dialogue. This is a path we've been walking simultaneously with our partners and allies. We've spent some time in recent days speaking to the long track record we have when it comes to this deepening sense of concern that has developed over almost 3 months now. It was in November, early November, if I recall, where we first started talking about this publicly. We have started to engage allies and partners late last year as the intelligence and information emerged of the Russian military buildup along the Ukrainian border, as our own concerns grew based on information that was then private, and has since been made public. So this is something we have been at for some time, but again, our goal is to forestall, to deter, to do everything we can to see to it that there is not renewed Russian aggression against Ukraine. But again, our charge is to be prepared with whatever course Vladimir Putin decides. Yeah, please.
What was the main achievement during this course?
Well, it was an opportunity. First, this was a moment that was agreed to by the two individuals in Geneva, coming out of the Secretary's meeting with Foreign Minister Lavrov in Geneva last month now. It was agreed that the two would have a follow-on conversation in the coming days. It was shortly after that engagement in Geneva where we submitted what we call our non-paper, the written response to the so-called Russian treaties. And that was done. The Russian Federation has now had that document for some time. We understand that they're studying it. We understand that Vladimir Putin has had an opportunity to, at least an opportunity to see it. And we know now that he will have an opportunity to approve the response that comes back from the Russian Federation. So the point was at least twofold. One, it was to confer on the road ahead, and we did come away with a clearer sense of what we can expect in the coming days or weeks, as however long it takes for the Russians to provide us with their response. We know from there that the Russians appear amenable to continue to engage in dialogue. As we've said, we far prefer that course, even as we know it needs to take place if it is to be successful in the context of de-escalation. But it was also an opportunity for the Secretary to reiterate the messages that the Russians have heard for some time now. That even as we far prefer the course of diplomacy and dialogue, we are continuing to prepare down the course of defense and deterrence. And so we had an opportunity again today to reinforce the idea of the high costs, the substantial costs, the sudden costs that would befall the Russian Federation if this aggression were to go forward. Simon.
Now that Secretary Blinken and Foreign Minister Lavrov has now spoken twice, they've exchanged papers. Now you said the response will go through Putin, and then afterwards Blinken and Lavrov will speak again. I wonder, is it then time, because there doesn't seem to be anything changing in terms of both sides' position, is it then time for the two presidents to speak again after that response has come? You know, does it need to escalate to that level?
It really depends on where we are. You've heard repeatedly from President Biden, I believe most recently during his press conference last month now, that he and we remain open and amenable to another leader-level engagement between President Biden and President Putin. They've had an opportunity to speak on the phone. They have seen each other on the screen within recent weeks. If we believe we're at a moment where another leader-level engagement has the potential to move the ball forward when it comes to this diplomacy, that is certainly something we're open to and amenable to. But it will just depend on where we are after this next step. Ben.
I hate to say it, but it sounds very much like Groundhog Day. I mean, we've been here for a month. You say the same thing. Russia says the same thing. Can you point to any one thing that suggests Russia is open to real dialogue? Anything practical that suggests they really want to change their action?
Ben, that's not incumbent on us. That's incumbent on Moscow.
So you've seen nothing?
It is true, as you have heard from us. We have not seen concrete, tangible signs of de-escalation. That is what we have continued to convey that we need to see if this dialogue, if this diplomacy is going to bear fruit. But to your question, we are not waiting on signs of de-escalation. We are not sitting on our hands calling for de-escalation, and we are moving forward as quickly and resolutely as we can to proceed down this path of defense and deterrence. Again, this is about defensive steps that we are taking as an alliance, as a NATO alliance, defensive steps that we are taking to shore up the defenses of our partner Ukraine, steps that we are taking to deter a Russian invasion or renewed Russian aggression against Ukraine. Some of that is consistent with the defensive steps that we've taken. Some of that lies in the fact that we've been very clear, not only the United States, but our European allies and others, about the massive costs, economic, financial, and otherwise, that would befall the Russian Federation if an invasion, renewed aggression, were to go forward. You've already seen manifestations of those costs even in advance of the imposition of any new sanctions or authorities on the Russian Federation. We've talked about this before, but the Russian stock market has declined significantly. The value of the ruble has declined significantly. Market participants are growing increasingly pessimistic about the implications of the sanctions and the economic measures that we've talked about were they to go forward. So that, I think, is just a preview of what would transpire were these measures to be fully put into place. So, to recap, that is a question that is best addressed to Moscow. It's incumbent on Moscow to de-escalate. We are not waiting for de-escalation. We are open and prepared to engage, continue to engage in diplomacy, but we are also moving ahead swiftly down the path of defense and deterrence.
And just, there was some confusion about the letter that was received yesterday. A few senior administration officials appeared to say that was the letter from Russia they were expecting. It was reported, and does that suggest that you don't know what's coming in that letter? That well could have been the letter when you first saw it? Why the confusion?
No, there was never an intention to suggest that was the formal response from the Russian Federation. What one of your colleagues reported and what you heard from senior State Department officials yesterday is that we received a follow-up from the Russian Federation. I will leave it to Foreign Minister Lavrov and the Russians to characterize what exactly they intended by that, but Foreign Minister Lavrov spoke to this missive publicly over the weekend, and we understand again today that we'll be receiving a formal response from the Russian Federation once it has been approved by President Putin. Yes?
Can I warn you, though, that in Ben's first question, since tomorrow literally is Groundhog Day, you should expect the same question again.
I may have a similar answer. Yes.
And in which case it would just
be
in keeping.
Prove the prophecy true. Yes, please.
TV and Discovery from Poland.
Yes.
Andrea mentioned sanctions, and as diplomacy seems to be going nowhere now, isn't it high time to start strengthening the eastern flank of NATO? And you mentioned Polish Foreign Minister Zbigniew Rau a moment ago. He is coming here tomorrow, and he will be talking about that. And he's also meeting with Secretary Blinken later this week. So could you preview those talks with the Secretary, between the Minister and the Secretary?
So to your first question, isn't it time to strengthen the eastern flank of NATO? The answer is unambiguously yes. We have been talking about that for weeks now. And in fact, we have taken concrete steps, some of which have been announced by the Department of Defense, to place thousands of troops, U.S. service members, at a heightened state of readiness should they be called into service by the North Atlantic Council. We have worked concertedly with our NATO allies, including our allies on the eastern flank, to work with them to prepare for the eventuality, possibility, of further Russian aggression. We will continue to take steps to reassure, to reinforce defensive steps NATO's eastern flank, because we agree it is important. When it comes to the Polish foreign minister, as you noted, as I noted earlier, the secretary had an opportunity to speak both with him, with the EU High Representative Josep Borrell and the NATO Secretary General today. We will continue to engage with our Polish allies, both in the context of the OSCE, and the engagement today was in the foreign minister's role as the chairman in office of the OSCE, but also as a valued and important NATO ally. I don't want to get ahead of those discussions, but this gets back to your question. We will continue to show our support in many different forms for our NATO allies, those on the eastern flank, our NATO allies throughout the continent.
Now, what you said was putting those troops on heightened alert. What about sending troops now to the eastern flank before any aggression that Russia may perpetrate?
Well, I don't want to speak for the Department of Defense. I don't want to speak for the White House, but I will tell you that we are taking and are considering a number of steps that will reinforce the message of defense and deterrence. Some of that is with regard to the unprecedented levels of defensive security assistance that we provided to our Ukrainian partners. Some of that is in the authorization, the expedited authorization that we provided to our NATO allies, including our Baltic allies, to provide U.S. origin equipment to Ukraine. But again, we are taking steps in the vein of defense and deterrence, working closely with our allies on the eastern flank to reassure and to reinforce their own defenses. Yes.
In terms of NATO and U.S.-European unity, do you find that Viktor Orban's visit to Moscow and press conference with Putin is helpful in any way?
Well, look, we know that a number of our counterparts around the world have engaged with the Russian Federation, some with Foreign Minister Lavrov, some with President Putin directly. We have consistently said that we support dialogue, we support diplomacy that is conducted as we have in full coordination and consultation with the alliance. That has been the North Star of our engagement with the Russians when our allies are not sitting next to us physically at the table. Nothing about Europe without Europe, nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine. So any dialogue, any diplomacy that is conducted in a similar vein is something that we would support, especially if it's something that has the potential to produce tangible signs of de-escalation.
Was it the case for the Hungarian Prime Minister?
I will leave it to our Hungarian allies to characterize their engagement with the Russian Federation. Courtney.
Thanks. Just another follow-up on Andrea's question earlier. I mean, about the deadline for de-escalation, rather. I mean, you've referred to economic and other penalties in the event of further and renewed aggression. But does that mean that the status quo can endure indefinitely as you continue hoping for a diplomatic breakthrough?
I don't think anyone wants to see the status quo endure indefinitely. And I say that because this massive Russian buildup along the border with Ukraine, the dispatch of troops into what should be sovereign, independent territory of Belarus, all of this heightens tensions. All of this increases the possibility of, whether by accident, whether by miscalculation, whether by the fabrication of pretext, that this buildup gives way to conflict. That is certainly not something we want to see happen. So no one is happy about the current situation. No one wants to see this buildup remain as it is for any longer than is necessary. That's why we've continued to call for de-escalation, and why we have continued to call for tangible signs of de-escalation. Let me move back to Peter.
Yeah, I wanted to actually to follow up on that same point. I mean, because all of this seems to put the US in a very kind of reactive position where there's a risk of, State Department priorities being set by Vladimir Putin. Is there a point at which this diplomatic process, taking up so much of the Secretary's time, so much of other senior officials' time, and ultimately surely detracting from efforts to pivot to Asia and focus on competition with China, is there a point at which this just needs to end?
We're a large country, we're a large department, not to use once more an overused metaphor, but we can walk and chew gum at the same time. In recent days alone, you've seen the president, you've seen the secretary engage with the Emir of Qatar, you're seeing him today with his Cypriot counterpart, you're seeing us engage on any number of challenges and opportunities in the region. So it is not the case that even as we are intently focused on a challenge, even something we might call a crisis like this, that it crowds out our ability to focus on the other challenges, the other opportunities that faces the United States.
So there's no time limit?
Again, we do not want to see this escalation of tensions last any longer than is necessary. We are calling for immediate de-escalation. That is what we want to see happen. Yes?
Were you able to achieve an agreement with Qatar regarding providing Europe with gas in case of a crisis?
This is something, when we talk about the contingency planning that we do, not necessarily in the vein of defense and deterrence, but in the vein of prudent planning that we've discussed with a number of energy-producing countries around the world. We know that the strength, we know that the severity, we know that the suddenness of the measures that we are prepared to put in place on the Russian Federation could have impacts well beyond Russia, including in terms of energy supplies. And so that's why we have had regular, frequent, substantive conversations with countries around the world on how we might mitigate some of those impacts, and we certainly believe we'll be in a position to do so.
Israel. Amnesty came out with this report accusing Israel of imposing apartheid on the Palestinians with policies of segregation, dispossession, and exclusion that amount to crimes against humanity. What's the U.S. government's response to that? Do you agree with the conclusions of this report? And do you share those concerns about the situation there in Israel?
Well, Simon, you know that as a general matter, we don't offer public comprehensive evaluations of reports by outside groups. We have our own rigorous standards and processes for making determinations on potential human rights abuses, for documenting what we see take place around the world, including on an annual basis in the Human Rights Report. What I will say, however, is that we reject the view that Israel's actions constitute apartheid. The department's own reports have never used such terminology. We are committed to promoting respect for human rights in Israel, in the West Bank, and the Gaza Strip. We have an enduring partnership with Israel, and we discuss a wide range of issues with our Israeli counterparts, including those related to human rights. We support the efforts of the Israeli government, of the Palestinian Authority, alongside human rights activists, to ensure accountability for human rights violations and abuses. And we continue to emphasize to Israel and to the Palestinian Authority the need to refrain, as you've heard us say repeatedly, from unilateral actions that exacerbate tensions. This includes the annexation of territory, settlement activity, demolitions, incitement of violence, and the providing of compensations for individuals imprisoned for acts of terrorism. We take all allegations of human rights abuses seriously. That is true around the world, including allegations of arbitrary detention, and we continue around the world to urge respect for human rights.
Do you think it comes from a place of anti-Semitism to make those accusations? That's what Israel's response to Amnesty has been.
We have had an opportunity to speak about this with our Israeli counterparts. They have conveyed their objections to the report. As we've noted, we don't offer our own public comprehensive evaluations of reports, but we certainly reject the label that has been attached to this. When speaking about Israel, one other point here, we think that it is important, as the world's only Jewish state, that the Jewish people must not be denied their right to self-determination, and we must ensure there isn't a double standard being applied.
Ned, it may be true that you don't offer public comprehensive evaluations of outside reports, but you certainly cite them quite a bit in your own human rights report. And I went back and looked, and in terms of just the last human rights report cited Amnesty International on Ethiopia, on Cuba, on China and Xinjiang, on Iran, on Burma, on Syria, on Cuba, and those references are endorsements of what this group, Amnesty, and then other groups as well that are cited as well, have found. Why is it that, without taking a stand or making a judgment about the findings of this particular report, why is it that all criticism of Israel from these groups is almost always rejected by the U.S. and yet accepted, welcomed, and endorsed when it comes out, when the criticism is of other countries, notably countries with which you have significant policy differences?
Matt, I would make a couple points. Number one, when we include a footnote in something like
these aren't footnotes, Ned. These are
when we cite,
yes.
which it's a game of semantics, I suppose, but whether you call it a citation or a footnote.
Well, when it says in the report, Amnesty International found this X in Xinjiang with the Uyghurs, and we we determine that we think that it's a genocide, and you guys come out and cite that and say, well, we also agree that it's a
that
genocide.
Is a far cry, Matt, from
I'm not
saying that we have
but
comprehensive agreement with a third-party report that was produced by an outside group.
So it's just when it's criticism of Israel that you feel free to disagree? Where have you ever disagreed with an Amnesty report or a human rights report on a country such as Iran?
This is not, Matt,
China?
this is not about any outside group. This is about our vehement disagreement with a certain finding in a report by an outside group.
Okay.
There are plenty of times where we cite, as you said, outside groups in our own reports. We cite the facts that they have uncovered, that they have put forward. But I don't think you're going to find any citation in any State Department document. And I don't think I'll regret saying this, that says the department agrees on a comprehensive basis with absolutely everything that's in this report. Barbara.
Is it the department's view that human rights abuses resulting from occupation are discrete events rather than resulting from discriminatory policies or discriminatory systems that are backed up by law?
Barbara, we document this comprehensively in our own human rights reports. And we document allegations of and what we have found in terms of Israel, the West Bank, and the Gaza Strip comprehensively on an annual basis. So I will leave it to that document to speak to our framework for this. I think you have heard us on a number of occasions when we have heard reports of or been in position to corroborate human rights abuses in this region that we have not hesitated to speak out.
I got two really brief ones.
Sure.
One is you may have seen that the Israeli military today said it was censuring or reprimanding several soldiers for their role in the death of or leading to the death of a Palestinian American. I've been asking for a couple of days now about whether you're satisfied with your request for clarification. Does this do it? Have you gotten this information from the Israelis, and are you satisfied with the response?
Well, I expect we'll have a little bit more to say on this later today, but let me say that we continue, as I said yesterday and last week, to be concerned by the circumstances of the death of Mr. Omar Assad. He, of course, was a U.S. citizen who was found dead on January 12th after Israeli soldiers detained him in the West Bank. We do note the public statement on the report of the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, commander's investigation into the case and its findings, including the determination that, quote, the incident showed a clear lapse of moral judgment and a failure to, quote, protect the sanctity of any human life. The IDF public summary of the investigation further states that the disciplinary action is being taken against the commander of the Netzach Yehuda battalion and other officers responsible for the unit involved in the incident, and that the Military Police Criminal Investigation Division investigation of the case is ongoing. We expect a thorough criminal investigation and full accountability in this case, and we welcome receiving additional information on these efforts as soon as possible. We continue to discuss this troubling incident with the Israeli government.
Okay, so what the IDF announced today is not satisfactory in and of itself. You want a criminal investigation?
We are continuing to discuss this. These are public statements that have come from the IDF. Again, we know that the investigation itself is ongoing, so it's something I expect we'll continue to discuss with our Israeli counterparts.
And then one other one, and this is really brief, and it's kind of minor, but it has attracted some attention, and that is yesterday after his conversation with Foreign Minister Lapid. It was the Secretary's conversation with the Secretary. Was it yesterday, or maybe it was the day before?
It was yesterday.
But anyway, he tweeted something and identified Foreign Minister Lapid as alternate prime minister, which is something that he's in the tweet, right? And he's never called him that before. So is there a reason for that?
My understanding is that that's his formal title.
Well, his title is also foreign minister.
Right.
Okay, so you've just decided to use his formal title starting yesterday?
I
don't know.
There has been no change in
Okay.
how we view Mr. Lapid. He is the alternate prime minister and foreign minister.
Gotcha.
Yes, please.
Comment on the recent mass trials of Cubans that participated in the protests for political reform last year. Almost 800 people has been charged, with more than 170 already convicted, some of them facing years of prison. Is there a space for new sanctions? Can we expect like a response for the US government, as you have praised the demonstrators last year?
Well, it is true that ever since the protests that began on July 11th of last year, we have seen the Cuban government respond with their trademark brand of repression of their own citizens. We believe, and you've heard from us,